I must warn you, however, that I have found evidence that the secret societies were planning as far back 1917 to invent an artificial threat from outer space in order to bring humanity together in a one-world government which they call the New World Order. In the spring of 1988 I saw a magazine that made reference to a document discovered by the research team of Moore, Chandra, and Friedman that outlined the government's knowledge of a down saucer, dead alien bodies, and an operation called Operation Majestic 12. I knew that Moore and Friedman were government agents and the document was a fraud. I had never heard of Chandra. I knew this because I had seen a list of agents who were to initiate a contingency plan called Majestic that would lead investigators off the track when such a need arose. I publicly stated that Moore, Chandra, and Friedman are government agents, that the Eisenhower briefing document is a fraud. Moore was proven to be an agent when, by his own admission on July 1, 1989, he stated he had participated in spying on fellow researchers, had changed documents, had put out disinformation. I hope to show that most modern secret societies, and especially those that practice degree of initiation, and that is the key, are really one society with one purpose. You may call them whatever you wish: the Order of the Quest, the Jason Society, the Rosh Hashanah, the Kabbalah, the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, the Knights of Columbus, the Jesuits, the Masons, the Ancient and Mystical Order of Rosicrucis, the Illuminati, the Nazi Party, the Communist Party, the executive members of Council on Foreign Relations, the Group, the Brotherhood of the Dragon, the Rosicrucians, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, the Open Friendly Secret Society, the Vatican, the Russell Trust, the Skull and Bones, the Scroll and Key, the Order. They are all the same and all work toward the same ultimate goal, a new world order. The Jason Society, or Jason Scholars, takes its name from the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece, and it is a branch of the Order of the Quest, one of the biggest degrees in the Illuminati. The Golden Fleece takes on the role of truth to Jason members. Jason represents the search for the truth. Therefore the name Jason Society denotes a group of men who are engaged in a search for the truth. The name Jason is spelled with capital letters when used as the name of the Jason Society. Lowercase letters are never used when referring to this secret group. Top secret documents that I read while with naval intelligence stated that President Eisenhower had commissioned the Jason Society to examine all of the evidence, facts, lies, and deception and find the truth of the alien question. Founders of the Jason Group, not the same as the Jason Society, include members of the famous Manhattan Project, which brought together almost every leading physicist in the nation to build the atomic bomb during World War II. The group is made up almost of theoretical physicists and is the most elite gathering of scientific minds in the U.S. As of 1987, the membership included 4 Nobel Prize winners. Today Jason continues to offer scientific help the government cannot find anywhere else. They are probably the only group of scientists in the U.S. that know the true state of highest technology. Jason is shrouded in what appears to be unnecessary secrecy. The group refuses to release its membership list. None of the members list Jason membership on their official resumes. Working completely behind the scenes, Jason has guided the nation's most important security decisions. These include, but are not limited to, Star Wars, submarine warfare, and predictions about the greenhouse effect. What is the difference between the Jason Scholars or Jason Society and the Jason Group? The documents that I read referred to the Jason Society in exactly those words. In the public documents the only Jason reference is to the Jason Group, administered by the MITRE Corporation. I believe the Jason Society is one of the highest degrees above Skull and Bones and the Scroll and Key in the Illuminati. In other words, it is a higher level of initiation. The Jason Group is a scientific organization formed and hired by the Jason Society and the U.S. government for obvious reasons. The answer lies with the many faces of the Illuminati and the fact several unifying reasons for bringing about the New World Order surfaced immediately following World War II. It is possible, however, that one or two or more of these reasons are not real, and thus manipulations. The evidence indicates that they are real and dangerous, each in its own way, and must be dealt with quickly and thoroughly. If it were secretly discovered that extraterrestrial beings were visiting the Earth, it certainly would make sense to unite humanity against the possible threat that this would present. If extraterrestrials are not visiting Earth, then it would make sense to invent them in order to convince opposing forces to unite against the threat. This has been done whether or not the alien beings in question exist. However, there are more believable and more immediate dangers that may be the reason for an alliance of so many traditionally opposing groups. The reason could be the threatened extinction of the human race by no other enemy than the human race itself. This threat may not be a manipulation, it may be real, and unless drastic measures are taken, may materialize within the next 100 years. The secret government. The origin, identity, and purpose of MJ-12. Pope John XXII, 1935, the signs are increasing. The lights in the sky will appear red, blue, green, rapidly. Someone is coming from very far and wants to meet the people of the earth. Meetings have already taken place. But those who have really seen have been silent. This chapter must be termed a hypothesis. I firmly believe that if aliens are real, this is the true nature of the beast. It is the only scenario that has been able to bind all the diverse elements. It is the only scenario that answers all the questions and places the various fundamental mysteries in an arena that makes sense. It is the only explanation which shows the chronology of events and demonstrates that the chronologies, when assembled, match perfectly. The bulk of this I believe to be true if the material that I viewed in the Navy is authentic. As for the rest, I do not know, and that is why this chapter must be termed a hypothesis. Most historic and current available evidence supports this hypothesis. The secret government. During the years following World War II, the government of the U.S. was confronted with a series of events which were to change beyond prediction its future and with it the future of humanity. These events were so incredible that they defied belief. A stunned President Truman and his top military commanders found themselves virtually impotent after having just won the most devastating and costly war in history. The U.S. had developed, used, and was the only nation on Earth in possession of the atomic bomb. This new weapon had the potential to destroy any enemy, and even the Earth itself. At that time the U.S. had the best economy, the most advanced technology, the highest standard of living, exerted the most influence, and fielded the largest and most powerful military forces in history. We can only imagine the confusion and concern when the informed elite of the U.S. government discovered that an alien spacecraft had crashed in the desert of New Mexico. Between January 1947 and December 1952 at least 16 crashed or downed alien craft, 65 alien bodies, and 1 live alien were recovered. An additional alien craft had exploded and nothing was discovered from that incident. Of these events, 13 occurred within the borders of the U.S., not including the craft which disintegrated in the air. Of these 13, 1 was in Arizona, 11 were in New Mexico, and 1 was in Nevada. 3 occurred in foreign countries. Of those, 1 was in Norway and the last 2 were in Mexico. Sightings of UFOs were so numerous that serious investigation and debunking of each report became impossible, utilizing the existing intelligence assets. The alien craft was found on February 13, 1948, on a mesa near Aztec, New Mexico. Another craft was located on March 25, 1948, in White Sands Proving Ground. It was 100 feet in diameter. A total of 17 alien bodies were recovered from those two crafts. Of even greater significance was the discovery of a large number of human body parts stored within both of these vehicles. A demon had reared its head and paranoia quickly took hold of everyone and in the know. The secret lid immediately became a top-secret lid and was screwed down tight. The security blanket was even tighter than that imposed upon the Manhattan Project. In the coming years these events were become the most closely guarded secrets in the history of the world. A special group of America's top scientists were organized under the name Project Sigma in December 1947 to study the phenomenon. The whole nasty business was contained. Project Sigma evolved into Project Grudge in December 1948. A low-level collection and disinformation project named Blue Book was formed under Grudge. 16 volumes were to come out of Grudge. Blue teams were put together to recover the crashed disks and dead or live aliens. The Blue teams were later to evolve into Alpha teams under Project Pounce. During these early years the U.S. Air Force and the CIA exercised complete control over the alien secret. In fact, the CIA was formed by Presidential Executive Order first as the Central Intelligence Group for the express purpose of dealing with the alien presence. Later the National Security Act was passed, establishing it as the Central Intelligence Agency. The National Security Council was established to oversee the intelligence community and especially the alien endeavor. A series of National Security Council memos and executive orders removed the CIA from the task of gathering foreign intelligence and slowly but thoroughly legalized direct action in the form of covert activities at home and abroad. On December 9, 1947, Truman approved issuance of NSC-4, entitled Coordination of Foreign Intelligence Information Measures at the urging of Secretaries Marshall, Forrestal, Patterson, and the Director of the State Department's Policy Planning Staff, George Kennan. The Foreign and Military Intelligence, Book 1, Final Report of the Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations with Report to Intelligence Activities, U.S. Senate, 94th Congress, 2nd Session, Report Number 94-755, April 26, 1976 p.49, states, this directive empowered the Secretary of State to coordinate overseas information activities designed to counter communism. A top-secret annex to NSC-4, NSC-4A, introduced the Director of CIA to undertake covert psychological activities in pursuit of the aims set forth in NSC-4. The initial authority given the CIA for covert operations under NSC-4A did not establish formal procedures for either coordinating or approving these operations. It simply directed the DCI to undertake covert actions and to ensure, through liaison with Senate and Defense, that the resulting operations were consistent with American policy. Later NSC-10-1 and NSC-10-halves were supersede NSC-4 and NSC-4A and expand the covert abilities even further. The Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, was chartered to carry out an expanded program of covert activities. NSC-10-1 and NSC-10-halves validated illegal and extra-legal practices and procedures as being agreeable to the national security leadership. The reaction was swift. In the eyes of the intelligence community no holds were barred. Under NSC-10-1 an Executive Coordination Group ECG was secretly tasked to coordinate the alien projects. NSC-10-1 and /2 were interpreted to mean that no one at the top wanted to know about anything until it was over and successful. These actions established a buffer between the President and the information. It was intended that this buffer serve as a means for the President to deny knowledge if leaks divulged the true state of affairs. This buffer was used in later years for the purpose of effectively isolating succeeding presidents from any knowledge of the alien presence other than what the secret government and the intelligence community wanted them to know. NSC-10-halves established a study panel which met secretly and was made up of the scientific minds of the day. The study panel was not called MJ-12. Another NSC memo, NSC 10-5, further outlined the duties of the study panel. These NSC memos and secret executive orders set the stage for the creation of MJ-12 only 4 years later. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal objected to the secrecy. He was a very idealistic and religious man. He believed that the public should be told. James Forrestal was also one of the first known abductees. When he began to talk to leaders of the opposition party and leaders of the Congress about the alien problem, he was asked to resign by Truman. He expressed his fears to many people. Rightfully, he believed that he was being watched. This was interpreted by those who were ignorant of the facts as paranoia. Forrestal later was said to have suffered a mental breakdown. He was ordered to the mental ward of Bethesda Naval Hospital. In spite of the fact that the administration had no authority to have him committed, the order was carried out. In fact, it was feared that Forrestal would begin to talk again. He had to be isolated and discredited. His family and friends were denied permission to visit. Finally, on May 21, 1949, Forrestal's brother made a fateful decision. He notified authorities that he intended to remove James from Bethesda on May 22. Sometime in early morning of May 22, 1949, agents of the CIA tied a sheet around James Forrestal's neck, fastened the other end to a fixture in his room, then threw James Forrestal out of the window. The sheet tore and he plummeted to his death. James Forrestal's secret diaries were confiscated by the CIA and were kept in the White House for many years. Due to public demand, the diaries were eventually rewritten and published in a sanitized version. The real diary information was later furnished by the CIA in book form to an agent who published the material as fiction. The name of the agent is Whitley Strieber and the book is Majestic. James Forrestal became one of the first victims of the cover-up. The live alien that had been found wandering in the desert from the 1949 Roswell crash was named Debbie. The name had been suggested by Dr. Vannevar Bush and was short for extraterrestrial biology entity. Debbie had a tendency to lie, and for over a year would give only the desired answer to questions asked. Those questions which would have resulted in an undesirable answer went unanswered. At some point during the second year of captivity he began to open up. The information derived from Debbie was startling, to say at least. The complication of his revelations from became the foundation of what would later be called the Yellow Book. Photographs were taken of Debbie which, among others, I was to view years later. Project Grudge. In late 1951 Debbie became ill. Medical personnel had been unable to determine the causes of Debbie's illness and had no background from which to draw. Debbie's system was chlorophyll-based and he processed food into energy much the same as plants. Waste material was excreted the same as plants. Several experts were called in to study the illness. These specialists included medical doctors, botanists, and entomologists. A botanist, Dr. Guillermo Mendoza, was brought in to try and help him recover. Dr. Mendoza worked to save Debbie until June 2, 1952, when Debbie died. Dr. Mendoza became the expert on at least this type alien of biology. The movie E.T. is the thinly disguised story of Debbie. In a futile attempt to save Debbie and to gain favor with this technologically superior race, the U.S. began broadcasting a call of help early in 1952 into the vast regions of space. The call went unanswered, but the Project Sigma continued as an effort of good faith. President Truman created the super-secret National Security Agency, NSA, by secret executive order on November 4, 1952. Its primary purpose was to decipher the alien communications, language, and establish a dialogue with the extraterrestrials. This most urgent task was a continuation of the earlier effort. The secondary purpose of the NSA was to monitor all communications and emissions from any and all electronic devices worldwide for the purpose of gathering intelligence, both human and alien, and to contain the secret for the alien presence. Project Sigma was successful. The NSA also maintains communications with Luna Base and other secret space programs. By executive order of the President, the NSA is exempt from all laws which do not specifically name the NSA in the text of the law as being subjected to that law. That means that if the agency is not spelled out in the text of any and every law passed by the Congress, it is not subject to that or those laws. The NSA now performs many other duties and in fact is the premier agency within the intelligence network. Today the NSA receives approximately 75% of the monies allocated to the intelligence community. The old saying "where the money goes therein the power resides" is true. The DCI today is a figurehead maintained as a public ruse. The primary task of the NSA is still alien communications, but now includes other extraterrestrial projects as well. President Truman had been keeping our allies, including the Soviet Union, informed of the developing alien problem. This had been done in case the aliens turned out to be a threat to the human race. Plans were formulated to defend the Earth in case of invasion. Great difficulty was encountered in maintaining international secrecy. It was decided that an outside group was necessary to coordinate and control international efforts in order to hide the secret from the normal scrutiny of governments by the press. The result was the formation of a secret group ruling body which became known as the Bilderberg Group. The group was formed and met for the first time in 1952. They were named after the first publicly known meeting place, the Bilderberg Hotel. That public meeting took place in 1954. They were nicknamed the Bilderbergers. The headquarters of this group is Geneva, Switzerland. The Bilderbergers evolved into a secret world government that now controls everything. The United Nations was then, and now, an international joke. Beginning in 1953, a new president occupied the White House. He was a man used to a structured staff organization with a chain of command. His method was to delegate authority and rule by committee. He made major decisions, but only when his advisors were unable to come to a consensus. His normal method was to read through or listen to several alternatives and then approve one. Those who worked closely with him have stated that his favorite comment was, "Just do whatever it takes." He spent a lot of time on golf course. This was not unusual for a man who had been career Army with the ultimate position of Supreme Allied Commander during the war, a post which had earned him 5 stars. The president was General of the Army Dwight David Eisenhower. During his first years in office, 1953, at least 10 more crashed disks were recovered along with 26 dead and 4 live aliens. Of the 10, 4 were found in Arizona, 2 in Texas, 1 in New Mexico, 1 in Louisiana, 1 in Montana, and 1 in South Africa. There were hundreds of sightings. Eisenhower knew that he had to wrestle and beat the alien problem. He knew that he could not do it by revealing the secret to the Congress. Early in 1953, the new president turned to his friend and fellow member of the CFR Nelson Rockefeller. Eisenhower and Rockefeller began planning the secret structure of Alien Task Supervision, which was to become a reality within 1 year. The idea for MJ-12 was thus born. It was Nelson's uncle Winthrop Aldrich who had been crucial in convincing Eisenhower to run for president. The whole Rockefeller family and with them, the Rockefeller Empire, backed Ike. Eisenhower belonged heart and soul to the CFR and the Rockefeller family. Asking Rockefeller for help with the alien problem was to be the biggest mistake Eisenhower ever made for the future of the U.S. and maybe for humanity. Within 1 week of Eisenhower's election, he had appointed Nelson Rockefeller chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Government Organization. Rockefeller was responsible for planning the reorganization of the government, something he had dreamed of for many years. New Deal programs went into one single cabinet position called the Department of Health, Education and Welfare. When the Congress approved the new cabinet position in April 1953, Nelson was named to the post of Undersecretary to Oveta Kulpabi. In 1953, astronomers discovered large objects in space which were tracked moving toward the Earth. It was first believed that they were asteroids. Later evidence proved that the objects could only be spaceships. Project Sigma intercepted alien radio communications. When the objects reached the Earth, they took up a very high geosynchronous orbit around the equator. There were several huge ships, and their actual intent was unknown. Project Sigma and a new project, Plato, through radio communications using the computer binary language, were able to arrange a landing that resulted in face-to-face contact with alien beings from another planet. This landing took place in the desert. The movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, is a fictionalized version of the actual events. Project Plato was tasked with establishing diplomatic relations with this race of space aliens. A hostage was left with us, a pledge that they would return and formalize a treaty. In the meantime, a race of humanoid aliens landed at Homestead Air Force Base in Florida and successfully communicated with the U.S. government. This group warned us against the race orbiting the equator and offered to help us with our spiritual development. They demanded that we dismantle and destroy our nuclear weapons as the major condition. They refused to exchange technology, citing that we were spiritually unable to handle the technology we already possessed. These overtures were rejected on the grounds that it would be foolish to disarm in the face of such an uncertain future. There was no track record to read from. It may have been an unfortunate decision. A third landing at Muroc, now Edwards Air Force Base, took place in 1954. The base was closed for 3 days and no one was allowed to enter or leave during that time. The historical event had been planned in advance. Details of a treaty had been agreed upon. Eisenhower arranged to be in Palm Springs on vacation. On the appointed day, the president was spirited to the base. The excuse was given to the press that he was visiting a dentist. Witnesses to the event have stated that 3 UFO flew over the base and then landed. Anti-aircraft batteries were undergoing live-fire training and the startled personnel actually fired at the crafts as they passed overhead. Luckily, the shells missed and no one was injured. President Eisenhower met with the aliens on February 20, 1954, and a formal treaty between the alien nation and the United States of America was signed. We then received our first alien ambassador from outer space. He was the hostage that had been left at the first landing in the desert. His end title was His Omnipotent Highness CRLLL or KRLLL, pronounced Krill or Krill. In the American tradition of disdain for royal titles, he was secretly called Original Hostage CRLLL, or KRLLL. Shortly after this meeting, President Eisenhower suffered a heart attack. 4 others present at the meeting were Franklin Allen of the Hearst newspapers, Edwin Norse of Brookings Institute, Gerald Light of metaphysical research fame, and Catholic Bishop McIntyre of Los Angeles. Their reaction was judged as a microcosm of what the public reaction might be. Based upon this reaction, it was decided that the public could not be told. Later studies confirmed the decision as sounds. An emotionally revealing letter written by Gerald Light spells it out in chilling detail. My dear friend, I have just returned from Muroc. The report is true, devastating true. I made the journey in company with Franklin Allen of the Hearst papers and Edwin Norse of Brookings Institute, Truman's erstwhile financial advisor, and Bishop McIntyre of L.A. When we were allowed to enter the restricted section, after 6 hours in which we were checked on every possible item, event, incident and aspect of our personal and public lives, I had the distinct feeling that the world had come to an end with fantastic realism. For I have never seen so many human beings in a state of complete collapse and confusion, as they realized that their own world had indeed ended with such finality as to beggar description. The reality of other plane-arrow forms is now and forever removed from realms of speculation and made rather painful part of the consciousness of every responsible scientific and political group. During my 2 days visit, I saw 5 separate and distinct types of aircraft being studied and handled by our Air Force officials, with the assistance and permission of the Etherians. I have no words to express my reactions. It has finally happened. It is now a matter of history. President Eisenhower, as you may already know, was spirited over to Muroc one night during his visit to Palm Springs recently. And it is my conviction that he will ignore the terrific conflict between the various authorities and go directly to the people via radio and television, if the impasse continues much longer. From what I could gather, an official statement to the country is being prepared for delivery about the middle of May. We know that no such announcement was ever made. The Silence Control Group won the day. We also know that 2 more ships, for which we can find no witnesses, whether landed sometime after the 3 or were already at the base before the 3 landed. Gerald Light specifically states that 5 ships were present and were undergoing study by the Air Force. His metaphysical experience is evident in that he calls the entities Etherians. Gerald Light capitalized Etherians, calling attention to the fact that these beings might have been viewed as gods by Mr. Light. The alien emblem was known as the trilateral insignia and was displayed on the craft and worn on the alien uniforms. Both of these landings and the second meeting were filmed. These films exist today. The treaty started that the aliens would not interfere in our affairs and we would not interfere in theirs. We would keep their presence on Earth a secret. They would furnish us with advanced technology and would help us in our technological development. They would not make any treaty with any other Earth nation. They could abduct humans on a limited and periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and monitoring of our development, with the stipulation that the humans would not be harmed, would be returned to their point of abduction, would have no memory of the event, and that the alien nation would furnish Majesty 12 with a list of all human contacts and abductees on a regularly scheduled basis. It was agreed that each nation would receive the ambassador of the other for as long as the treaty remained in force. It was further agreed that the alien nation and the U.S. would exchange 16 personnel with the purpose of learning of each other. The alien guests would remain on Earth. The human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time, then return, at which point a reverse exchange would be made. A reenactment of this event was dramatized in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. A tip-off to who works for whom can be determined by the fact that Dr. J. Allen Hynek served as the technical advisor for the film. I noticed that the top-secret report containing the official version of the truth of the alien question, entitled Project Grudge, which I read while in the Navy, was so authored by Lieutenant Col. Friend and Dr. Allen Hynek, who was cited as a CIA asset attached to Project Grudge. Dr. Hynek, the one who debunked many legitimate UFO incidents when he functioned as the scientific member of the very public Project Blue Book. Dr. Hynek is the man responsible for the infamous "it was only swamp gas" statement. It was agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation and that 2 bases would be constructed for the joint use of the alien nation and the U.S. government. Exchange of the technology would take place in the jointly occupied bases. These alien bases would be constructed under Indian reservations in the Four Corners area of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico and Arizona, and one would be constructed in an area known as Dreamland. Dreamland was built in the Mojave Desert near, or in, a place called Yucca. I cannot remember if it was Yucca Valley, Yucca Flat, or Yucca Providing Ground, but Yucca Valley is what I always seem to want to say. More UFO sightings and incidents occur in the Mojave Desert of California than any other place in the world. So many, in fact, that no one even bothers to make reports. Anyone who ventures into the desert to talk to the residents will be astounded by the frequency of activity and with the degree of acceptance demonstrated by those who have come to regard UFOs as normal. All alien areas are under complete control of the Naval Department, according to the documents that I read. All personnel who work in these complexes receive their checks from the Navy through a subcontractor. The checks never make references to the government or the Navy. Construction of the bases began immediately, but progress was slow. Large amounts of money were available in 1957. Work continued on the Yellow Book. Project Red Light was formed and experimentation in test-flying alien craft was begun in earnest. A super top-secret facility was built at Groom Lake in Nevada in the midst of the weapons test range. It was codenamed Area 51. The installation was placed under the Department of Navy and all personnel required a clearance as well as executive presidential, called majestic approval. This is ironic, due to the fact that the President of the U.S. does not have clearance to visit the site. The alien base and exchange of technology actually took place in an area codenamed the Dark Side of the Moon. According to the documentation that I read, at least 600 alien beings actually resided full-time at this site along with an unknown number of scientists and CIA personnel. Due to the fear of implantation, only certain people were allowed to interface with the alien beings, and those personnel were and are watched and monitored continuously. The Army was tasked to form a super-secret organization to furnish security for the alien-tasked projects. This organization became National Reconnaissance Organization based at Fort Carson, Colorado. The specific teams trained to secure the projects were called Delta. Lieutenant Col. James Bogritz was a Delta Force commander. A second project code named Snowbird was promulgated to explain away any sightings of the red light crafts as being Air Force experiments. The Snowbird crafts were manufactured using conventional technology and were flown for the press on several occasions. Project Snowbird was also used to debunk legitimate public sightings of alien craft, UFOs to the public, IACs to those in the know. Project Snowbird was very successful, and reports from the public declined steadily until recent years. A multi-million-dollar secret fund was organized and kept by the military office of the White House. This fund was used to build over 75 deep underground facilities. Presidents who asked were told the fund was used to build deep underground shelters for the president in case of war. Only a few were built deep underground shelters for the president. Millions of dollars were funneled through this Office of Majesty 12 and then out to the contractors. It was used to build top-secret bases as well as top-secret deep underground military bases, and the facilities promulgated by Alternative 2 throughout the nation. President Johnson used this fund to build a movie theater and pave the road on his ranch. He had no idea of its true purpose. The secret White House Underground Construction Fund was set up in 1957 by President Eisenhower. The funding was obtained from Congress under the guise of construction and maintenance of secret sites where the president could be taken in case of military attack, presidential emergency sites. The sites are literally holes in the ground, deep enough to withstand a nuclear blast, and are outfitted with state-of-the-art communications equipment. To date there are more than 75 sites spread around the country which were built using money from this fund. The Atomic Energy Commission has built at least an additional 22 underground sites. The location and everything to do with these sites were and are considered and treated as top secret. The money was and is in control of the military office of the White House, and was and is laundered through so circuitous a web that even the most knowledgeable spy or accountant cannot follow it. As of 1980 only a few at the beginning and end of this web knew what the money was for. The money was authorized by the Appropriations Committee, who allocated it to the Department of Defense as a top-secret item in the Army construction program. The Army, however, could not spend it and in fact did not even know what it was for. Authorization to spend the money was in reality given to the Navy, only one man, a Navy commander who was assigned to the Chesapeake Division but in reality was responsible only to the military office of the White House, knew of the actual purpose, amount, and ultimate destination of the top-secret money. The total amount transferred is unknown and the actual use of the money is unknown. Meanwhile, Nelson Rockefeller changed positions again. This time he was to take C.D. Jackson's old position, which had been called the Special Assistant for Psychological Strategy. With Nelson's appointment, the name was changed to the Special Assistant for Cold War Strategy. This position would evolve over the years into the same position Henry Kissinger was ultimately to hold under President Nixon. Officially, he was to give advice and assistance in the development of increased understanding and cooperation among all peoples. The official description was a smokescreen, for secretly he was the presidential coordinator for the intelligence community. In his new post, Rockefeller reported directly, and solely, to the president. He attended meetings of the Cabinet, the Council on Foreign Economic Policy, and the National Security Council, which was the highest policy-making body in the government. Nelson Rockefeller was also given a second important job as the head of the secret unit called the Planning Coordination Group, which was formed under NSC 5412-1 in March 1955. The group consisted of different ad hoc members, depending on the subject on the agenda. The basic members were Rockefeller, a representative of the Department of Defense, a representative of the Department of State, and the Director of Central Intelligence. It was soon called the 5412 Committee or the Special Group. NSC 5412-1 established the rule that covert operations were subject to approval by an executive committee, whereas in the past these operations were initiated solely on the authority of the Director of Central Intelligence. Eisenhower had preceded NSC 5412-1 to establish a permanent committee, not ad hoc, to be known as Majestic 12, MJ-12, to oversee and conduct all covert activities concerned with the alien question. NSC 5412-1 was created to explain the purpose of these meetings when Congress and the press became curious. Majesty 12 was made up of Nelson Rockefeller, Director of Central Intelligence Alan Welsh Dulles, Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, Secretary of Defense Charles E. Wilson, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Arthur W. Radford, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation J. Edgar Hoover, 6 men from the Executive Committee of the Council on Foreign Relations known as the Wise Men, 6 men from the Executive Committee of Jason Group, and Dr. Edward Teller. The Jason Group is a secret scientific group formed during the Manhattan Project and administrated by the MITRE Corporation. The inner core of the CFR recruits its members from the Skull and Bones and the Scroll and Key Societies of Yale and Harvard. The Wise Men are key members of the CFR and also members of a secret order of the Quest known as the Jason Society. There were 19 members of Majesty 12. The first rule of Majesty 12 was that no order could be given and no action could be taken without a majority vote of 12 in favor. Thus Majority 12. Orders issued by Majesty 12 became known as Majority 12 Directives. This group was made up over the years of the top officers and directors of the CFR and later the Trilateral Commission. Gordon Dean, George Bush and Zbigniew Brzezinski were among them. The most important and influential of the Wise Men were John McCloy, Robert Lovett, Averill Harriman, Charles Bolin, George Kennan, and Dean Acheson. Their policies were to last well into the decade of the 70s. It is significant that President Eisenhower as well as the first 6 Majesty 12 members from the government were also members of the CFR. This gave control of the most secret and powerful group in government to a special interest club that was itself controlled by the Illuminati. Throughout researchers will soon discover that not all of the Wise Men attended Harvard or Yale and not all of them were chosen for Skull and Bones or Scroll and Key membership during their college years. You will be able to quickly clear up the mystery by obtaining the book The Wise Men by Walter Isaacson and Evan Thomas, Simon & Schuster, New York. I have found that members were chosen on an ongoing basis by invitation based upon merit post-college and were not confined to Harvard or Yale only because of this fact. A complete list of Skull and Bones members can never be compiled from the catalogs or addresses of the college segment of the Russell Trust, also known as Brotherhood of Death, or the Skull and Bones. Now you know why it has been impossible to pinpoint the membership either by number or by name. I believe that the answer lies hidden in the CFR files, if files exist. A chosen few were later initiated into the secret branch of the Order of the Quest known as the Jason Society. They are all members of the CFR and at the time were known as the Eastern Establishment. This should give you a clue to the far-reaching and serious nature of these most secret college societies. The society is alive and well today, but now includes members of the Trilateral Commission as well. The Trilateralists existed secretly before 1973. The name of the Trilateral Commission was taken from the alien flag known as the Trilateral Insignia. Majesty 12 was to survive right up to the present day. Under Eisenhower and Kennedy it was erroneously called the 5412 Committee, or more correctly, the Special Group. In the Johnson administration it became the 303 Committee because the name 5412 had been compromised in the book The Secret Government. Actually, NSC 5412 one was leaked to the author to hide the existence of NSC 5410. Under Nixon, Ford, and Carter it was called the 40 Committee, and under Reagan it became the PI 40 Committee. Over all those years only the name changed. By 1955 it became obvious that the aliens had deceived Eisenhower and had broken the treaty. Mutilated humans were being found along with mutilated animals across the U.S. It was suspected that the aliens were not submitting a complete list of human contacts and abductees to Majesty 12 and it was suspected that not all abductees had been returned. The Soviet Union was suspected of interacting with them, and this proved to be true. The aliens stated that they had been, and were then, manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion. You must understand that this claim could also be a manipulation. After several Air Force combat air engagements with alien craft it also became apparent that our weapons were no match against them. In November 1955 NSC 5412 Havs was issued establishing a study committee to explore all factors which are involved in the making and implementing of foreign policy in the nuclear age. This was only a blanket of snow that covered the real subject of study, the alien question. By Secret Executive Memorandum NSC 5511 in 1954, President Eisenhower had commissioned the study group to examine all the facts, evidence, lies, and deception and discover the truth of the alien question. NSC 5412 Havs was only a cover that had become necessary when the press began inquiring as to the purpose of regular meetings of such important men. The first meetings began in 1954 and were called the Quantico meetings because they met at the Quantico Marine Base. The study group was made up solely of 35 members of the CFR Secret Study Group. Dr. Edward Teller was invited to participate. Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski was the study director for the first 18 months. Dr. Henry Kissinger was chosen as the group's study director for the second 18 months beginning in November 1955. Nelson Rockefeller was a frequent visitor during the study. The second phase meetings were also held at a Marine Base at Quantico, Virginia, and the group became known as Quantico II. Nelson Rockefeller built a retreat somewhere in Maryland for Majesty 12 and Study Committee. It could be reached only by air. In this manner they could meet away from public scrutiny. This secret meeting place is known by the code name the Country Club. Complete living, eating, recreation, library, and meeting facilities exist at the location. The Aspen Institute is not the Country Club. The study group was publicly terminated in the later months of 1956. Henry Kissinger wrote what was officially termed the results in 1957 as Nuclear Weapons and Foreign Policy, published for CFR by Harper and Brothers, New York. In truth, the manuscript had already been 80% written while Kissinger was at Harvard. The study group continued, veiled in secrecy. A clue to the seriousness Kissinger attached to the study can be found in statements by his wife and friends. Many of them stated that Henry would leave home early each morning and return late each night without speaking to anyone or responding to anyone. It seemed as if he were in another world which held no room for outsiders. These statements are very revealing. The revelations of the alien presence and actions during the study must have been a great shock. Henry Kissinger was definitely out of character during this time. He would never again be affected in this manner no matter the seriousness of any subsequent event. On many occasions he would work very late into the night after having put in a full day. This behavior eventually led to divorce. A major finding of the alien study was that the public could not be told. It was believed that this would most certainly lead to economic collapse of the religious structure, and national panic, which could lead into anarchy. Secrecy thus continued. An offshoot of this funding was that if the public could not be told, Congress could not be told. Funding for the projects and research would have to come from outside the government. In the meantime, money was to be obtained from the military budget and from CIA confidential, non-appropriated funds. Another major finding was that the aliens were using humans and animals for a source of glandular secretions, enzymes, hormonal secretions, blood plasma, and possibly in genetic experiments. The aliens explain these actions as necessary to their survival. They stated that their genetic structure had deteriorated and that they were no longer able to reproduce. They stated that if they were unable to improve their genetic structure, their race would soon cease to exist. We looked upon their explanations with extreme suspicion. Since our weapons were literally useless against the aliens, Majesty 12 decided to continue friendly diplomatic relations until such time as we were able to develop a technology which would enable us to challenge them on a military basis. Overtures would have to be made to the Soviet Union and other nations to join forces for the survival for humanity. In the meantime, plans were developed to research and construct two weapons systems using conventional and nuclear technology, which would hopefully bring us to parity. The result of the research were projects Joshua and Excalibur. Joshua was a weapon captured from Germans which was capable of shattering 4-inch thick armor plate at a range of 2 miles. It used aimed, low-frequency sound waves, and it was believed that this weapon would be effective against the alien craft and beam weapons. Excalibur was a weapon carried by missile not to rise above 30,000 feet above ground level, AGL, not to deviate from designated target more than 50 meters, able to would penetrate 1,000 meters of tufa, hard-packed soil such as that found in New Mexico, carry a 1 megaton warhead, and for use in destroying the aliens in their underground bases. Joshua was developed successfully but never used, to my knowledge. Excalibur was not pushed until recent years, and now, we are told, there is an unprecedented effort to develop this weapon. The public would be told that Excalibur would be needed to take out Soviet underground command posts. We know that is not true because one rule of war is that you try not to destroy the leaders. They are needed either to unconditionally surrender or to negotiate terms. Leaders are also needed to ensure peaceful transition of power and the compliance of the populace to all negotiated or dictated terms. The events at Fatima in the early part of the century were scrutinized. On the suspicion that it was alien manipulation, an intelligence operation was put into motion to penetrate the secrecies surrounding the event. The U.S. utilized its Vatican moles and soon obtained the entire Vatican study, which included the prophecy. This prophecy stated that if man did not turn from evil and place himself at the feet of Christ, the planet would self-destruct and the events described in the Book of Revelations would indeed come to pass. The prophecy demanded that Russia be consecrated to the Sacred Heart. It stated that a child would be born who would unite the world with a plan for world peace and a false religion. The people would discern that he was evil and was indeed the Antichrist. World War III would begin in the Middle East with an invasion of Israel by a united Arab nation using conventional weapons, which would culminate in a nuclear holocaust. Most of the life on this planet would suffer horribly and die as a result. The return of Christ would occur shortly thereafter. When the aliens were confronted with this finding, they confirmed that it was true. The aliens explained that they had created us through genetic manipulation in a laboratory. They stated that they had manipulated the human race through religion, Satanism, witchcraft, magic, and the occult. They further explained that they were capable of time travel, and the events would indeed come to pass if the conditions were not met. Later exploitation of alien technology by the US and Soviet Union, utilizing time travel in a Project Rainbow, confirmed the prophecy. The aliens showed a hologram, which they claimed was the actual crucifixion of Christ. The government filmed the hologram. We did not know whether to believe them. Were they using our genuine religions to manipulate us? Or were they indeed the source of our religions with which they had been manipulating us all along? Or was this the beginning scenario of the genuine end times and the return of Christ which had been predicted in the Bible? I do not know the answer. A symposium was held in 1957 which was attended by some of the great scientific minds then living. They reached the conclusion that by, or shortly after, the year 2000 the planet would self-destruct due to increased population and man's exploitation of the environment without any help from God or the aliens. By secret executive order of President Eisenhower, the Jason scholars were ordered to study this scenario and make recommendations from their findings. The Jason Society confirmed the finding of the scientists and made 3 recommendations called Alternatives 1, 2, and 3. Alternative 1 was to use nuclear devices to blast holes in the stratosphere from which the heat and pollution could escape into space. They would then change the human cultures from that of exploitation into cultures of environment protection. Of the 3, this was decided to be the least likely to succeed due to the inherent nature of man and the additional damage the nuclear explosions would themselves create. The existence of a hole in the ozone layer may indicate that Alternative 1 might have been attempted. This is, however, only conjecture. Alternative 2 was to build a vast network of underground cities and tunnels in which a select representation of all cultures and occupations would survive and carry on the human race. The rest of humanity would be left to fend for themselves on the surface of the planet. We know that these facilities have been built and are ready and waiting for the chosen few to be notified. Alternative 3 was to exploit the alien and conventional technology in order for a select few to leave the Earth and establish colonies in outer space. I am not able either confirm or deny the existence of batch consignments of human slaves, which would be used for the manual labor as a part of the plan. The Moon, code-named Adam, was the object of primary interest, followed by the planet Mars, code-named Eve. I am now in possession of official NASA photographs of one of the Mu bases. I believe that the Mars colony is also a reality. As a delaying action, all 3 alternatives included birth control, sterilization, and the introduction of deadly microbes to control or slow the growth of the Earth's population. AIDS is only one result of these plans. It was decided by the elite that since the population must be reduced and controlled, it would be in the best interest of the human race to rid ourselves of the undesirable elements of our society. Specific targeted populations included blacks, Hispanics, and homosexuals. The joint US and Soviet leadership dismissed Alternative 1 but ordered work to begin on Alternatives 2 and 3 virtually at the same time. In 1959 the Rand Corporation hosted a deep underground construction symposium. In the symposium report, machines are pictured and described which could bore a tunnel 45 feet in diameter at the rate of 5 feet per hour on 1959. It also displays pictures of huge tunnels and underground vaults containing what appear to be a complex facilities and possibly even cities. It appears that the previous 5 years of all-out underground construction had made significant progress by that time. The ruling powers decided that one means of funding the alien-connected and other black projects was to corner the illegal drug market. The English and French had established a historical precedent when they exploited the opium trade in the Far East and used it to fill their coffers and gain a solid foothold in China and Vietnam, respectively. A young ambitious member of the CFR was approached. His name is George Bush, who at the time was the president and CEO of the offshore division of Zapata Oil, based in Texas. Zapata Oil was experimenting with the new technology of offshore drilling. It was correctly thought that the drugs could be shipped from South America to the offshore platforms by fishing boat, to be taken from there to shore by the normal transportation used for supplies and personnel. By this method no customs or law enforcement agency would subject the cargo to search. George Bush agreed to help, and organized the operation in conjunction with the CIA. The plan worked better than anyone had dreamed. It has since expanded worldwide. There are now many other methods of bringing the illegal drugs into the country. It must always be remembered that George Bush began the sale of drugs to our children. The CIA now controls most of the world's illegal drug markets. The official space program was boosted by President Kennedy in his inaugural address when he mandated that the U.S. put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Although innocent in its conception, this mandate enabled those in charge to funnel vast amounts of money into black projects and conceal the real space program from the American people. A similar program in the Soviet Union served the same purpose. In fact, a joint alien, United States, and Soviet Union base existed on the moon at the very moment Kennedy spoke the words. At some point President Kennedy discovered portions of the truth concerning the drugs and the aliens. He issued an ultimatum in 1963 to Majesty 12. President Kennedy assured them that if they did not clean up the drug problem, he would. He informed Majesty 12 that he intended to reveal the presence of aliens to the American people within the following year, and ordered a plan developed to implement his decision. President Kennedy was not a member of the CFR and knew nothing of Alternative 2 or 3, although some researchers claim JFK was a member of CFR. I can find no legitimate list with his name upon it. Internationally, the operations were supervised by the Bilderberg Elite Committee known as the Policy Committee. In the U.S. they were supervised by the Executive Committee of the CFR and in the Soviet Union by its sister organization. President Kennedy's decision struck fear into the hearts of those in charge. His assassination was ordered by the Policy Committee and the order was carried out by agents in Dallas. President John F. Kennedy was murdered by the Secret Service agent who drove his car in the motorcade, and the act is plainly visible in the Zapruder film. Watch the driver and not Kennedy when you view the film. All of the witnesses who were close enough to the car to see William Greer shoot Kennedy were themselves all murdered within 2 years of the event. The Warren Commission was a farce, and CFR members made up the majority of its panel. They succeeded in snowing the American people. Many other patriots who attempted to reveal the alien secret have also been murdered throughout the intervening years. At the present time, until year 1990, over 200 material witnesses or people actually involved with the assassination are dead. The odds against this happening are so high that no one has been able to calculate them. During the U.S. initial space exploration and the moon landings, every launch was accompanied by alien craft. On November 20, 1990, LA TV Channel 2 announced that a separate, red, glowing, round-shaped object accompanied the Space Shuttle Atlantis on its latest classified military mission. That was the first public admission. A moon base, Luna, was photographed by the lunar orbiter and filmed by the Apollo astronauts. Domes, spires, tall round structures which look like silos, huge T-shaped mining vehicles that left stick-like tracks in the lunar surface, and extremely large as well as small alien craft appear in the official NASA photographs. It is a joint US and Soviet base. The space program is a farce and an unbelievable waste of money. Alternative 3 is reality. It is not science fiction. The Apollo astronauts were severely shaken by this experience, and their lives and subsequent statements reflect the depth of the revelation and the effect of the muzzle order which followed. One astronaut actually did talk to the British producers of the TV expose Alternative 003. It was aired on the documentary, non-fiction program named Science Report, confirming many of the allegations. In the book Alternative 003, the pseudonym Bob Groden was used in place of the astronaut's identity. The real Bob Groden is a friend of Leslie Watkins and is a part of the Kennedy assassination cover-up. It was also stated that the astronaut committed suicide in 1978. This cannot be validated by any source, and I believe that several so-called facts in the book are really disinformation. I firmly believe that this disinformation is a result of pressure put upon the authors and is meant to nullify the effect upon the populace of the British TV expose Alternative 3. The headquarters of the international conspiracy is in Geneva, Switzerland. The ruling body is made up of 3 committees consisting of 13 members each, and all 3 together comprise the 39 members of the executive committee of the body known as the Bilderberg Group. The most important and powerful of the 3 committees is the Policy Committee. It is more than interesting to note that the U.S. had 13 original colonies and that 39 delegates from those colonies signed the Constitution after it was written and adopted in the first Constitutional Convention. Do you believe that is coincidence? I can say that the book Alternative 003 is at least 70% true from my own knowledge and the knowledge of my sources. I believe that the disinformation was an attempt to compromise the British TV expose with information that could be proven false, just as the Eisenhower briefing document, which was released here in the US under the contingency plan Majestic 12, can also be proven false. To my knowledge, the only hostility between aliens and humans was provoked by the US military when they were ordered to shoot down UFOs in order to capture technology. Another plan is in force. It is the plan to prepare the public for eventual confrontation with an alien race. It could also intend to make you believe in an alien race that may not exist. The public is being bombarded with movies, radio, advertising, and TV programs depicting almost every aspect of the purported true nature of an alien presence. This includes the good and the bad. Look around and pay attention. Someone is planning to make their presence known and the government is preparing you for it. They do not want any panic. The unprecedented number of sightings worldwide indicates that public exposure is not far off. Never in history have there been so many incidents involving UFOs, and never in history have there been so many official acknowledgments. Philip Klass is an agent of the CIA. This was stated in the documents I saw between 1970 and 1973. One of his jobs as an aviation expert was to debunk everything to do with UFOs. All military commanders were instructed to call him to gain information on how to debunk and/or explain UFO contacts and/or sightings to the public and/or the press if and when the need arose. Some people seem to love Klass. They encourage him and heap large doses of attention upon him. He is invited to speak at UFO events and is quoted in papers, books, and newspapers as being the expert on what really happened. Philip Klass is not operating in our best interest. His debunking and explanations of UFO sightings are so full of holes that a 6-year-old child should be able to discern his true purpose. I have seen poor misled people actually ask Klass for his autograph, an act similar in magnitude to Eliot Ness asking Al Capone for his autograph. I have found that in many instances the secret elect are absolutely right when they state that people will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent. Quote from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. William Moore, Jamie Chandra, and Stanton Friedman are writing, Full Knowledge, Understanding, and Consent, Agents of the Secret Government. William Moore's reported use of a Defense Investigative Service ID card and his reported self-confession to Lee Graham that he is an agent of the government confirmed it. Some of the self-appointed ufologists still look up to Moore, and still cite his research in their correspondence, papers, and books. This reflects a degree of ignorance and stupidity in the UFO community. It is no mystery to me why mainstream America calls ufologists wackos, loonies, and nuts. In some cases they are. You must understand that the government is not ever going to allow any person or any group of persons to uncover the most highly classified secret in the world, if they can help it. They will always have agents controlling UFO groups, publications and information. If aliens are not real and the whole thing turns out to be the greatest hoax ever perpetrated, just who do you think did the perpetrating? If the underground history is correct, aliens have manipulated and/or ruled the human race through various secret societies, religions, magic, witchcraft, and the occult. The CFR and the Trilateral Commission are in complete control of the alien technology and are also in complete control of the nation's economy. Eisenhower was the last president to know the entire overview of the alien problem. Succeeding presidents were told only that Majesty 12 and the intelligence community wanted them to know. Believe me, it was not the truth. Majesty 12 has presented most new presidents with a picture of a lost alien culture seeking to renew itself, build a home on this planet, and shower us with gifts of technology. In some cases the president was told nothing. Each president in turn has swallowed the story, or no story at all, hook, line and sinker. Meanwhile innocent people continue to suffer at the hands of the alien and human scientists. I have been unable to determine exactly what it is they are doing. Many people are abducted and are sentenced to live with psychological and physical damage for the rest of their lives. Could this really be a CIA mind control operation? There is always the possibility that I was used, that the whole alien scenario is the greatest hoax in history designed to create an alien enemy from outer space in order to expedite the formation of a one-world government. I have found evidence that this could be true. I advise you to consider this scenario as being probable. Through ignorance or misplaced trust, we as a people have abdicated our role as the watchdog of our government. Our government was founded of the people, for the people, by the people. There was no mention or intent ever to abdicate our role and place our total trust in a handful of men who meet secretly to decide our fate. In fact, the structure of our government was designed to prevent that from ever happening. If we had done our jobs as citizens, we would never have reached this point. Most of us are completely ignorant as to even the most basic functions of our government. We have truly become a nation of sheep, and sheep are always eventually led to slaughter. It is time to stand up in the manner of our forefathers and walk like men. I remind you that the Jews of Europe marched obediently to the ovens after having been warned, believing all the while that the facts could not possibly be true. When the outside world was told of the Holocaust occurring in Hitler's Europe, it was not believed at first. You must understand that, real or not, the purported presence of aliens have been used to neutralize certain widely different segments of the population. Don't worry. The benevolent Space Brothers will save you. It can also be used to fill the need for an extraterrestrial threat to justify the formation of a new world order. The aliens are eating us. The most important information that you need to determine the future actions is that this new world order calls for the destruction of the sovereignty of nations, including the U.S. The new world order cannot, and will not, allow our Constitution to continue to exist. The New World Order will be a totalitarian socialist system. We will be slaves shackled to cashless system of economic control. If the documentation that I viewed while I was in naval intelligence is true, then what you just read is probably closer to the truth than anything ever written. If extraterrestrials are a hoax, then what you just read is exactly what the Illuminati wants you to believe. I can assure you beyond any shadow of a doubt that even if aliens are not real, the technology is real. Anti-gravity craft exist and human pilots fly them. I and millions of others have seen them. They are metal, they are machines, they come in different shapes and sizes, and they are obviously intelligently guided. Ronald Reagan to Mikhail Gorbachev, if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species from another planet, we'd forgot all the little local differences that we have between our two countries and we would find out once and for all that we really all human beings on the earth.